Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K Facebook Live. And I missed y'all last week when I was out of town. Went up to visit my family in Iowa and had a good time up there. Had a few flight issues, but anybody that's flown knows that flights get canceled like at the drop of a hat anymore. But we did make it finally after a little trouble getting there. We kind of had to totally rebook our flights, and I mean, it's just a mess. But other than that, it was all good. We had a good time when we were up there. And my older daughter actually did her first college visit. And I'm like, how am I old enough to have a daughter who's doing college visits? But apparently I am. So she wanted to check out one of the programs up there. It's still very early. She's just going to be a sophomore this year, but she wanted to hop in and check out a program that was up there and kind of see whether she was interested in it or not. So all right. Hey, Bree, thanks for hopping in today. And for everyone else who hops in and says hello or doesn't say hello, I appreciate y'all being here and checking out the video as well. So today we are going to make a quick card with the Christmas season stamp set bundle. And also I use the Christmas to Remember stamp set for the sentiment on it. But it's a super simple card and just a little bit of layering, a little bit of stamping, and it's done. So it's really pretty. I shouldn't say the card. The stamp set is really pretty. I think the card's pretty, but y'all might not. But it's a really pretty stamp set, really easy to use, lots of dies with it as well. So it's a really good bundle. So hey, Rosie and Mary and Karen. I was just chatting about my trip, Mary, and hey, thanks for joining, Jackie. It was getting there was a little challenging. Our flights got canceled about an hour before we were going to leave for the airport, so we were sort of left scrambling, but we made it. Didn't arrive until about 1:30 in the morning local time, which was 2:30 our time, so I was tired, but we all made it good. So, hey, Diane, thanks for hopping in from Gilda's today. Hope y'all are having a good day stamping, and Carol as well. Thanks for joining. All right, so let's get going on the card. This is the Christmas season stamp set, and as you can see, it's got all sorts of beautiful, hey Pam, thanks for joining today, all sorts of beautiful holiday, Christmas, winter related images. So again, this doesn't specifically have to be Christmas, but generally kind of winter themed, I think is what it is. And there's a gorgeous set of dies, and it's a huge set of dies that coordinates with it. There are some kind of label-y type dies here, which don't necessarily coordinate with any specific image, but they're just nice for cutting out sentiments, or if you want to stamp some of these images and cut it out and use it as a background on something, definitely good. And then there are a couple that can be used with sentiments, and I'll show you in a second the sentiments that coordinate with it. But pretty much all of these images, except for the little dots here, I think there's even, maybe there's not one for the, oh no, there is one for the stem as well. So I think every image except for the little dots you can cut out with one of the dies in this die set. This is actually in a, hey Vicki and Meryl, thanks for joining today from North Carolina. It's toasty. Yeah, it's a little warm here too. So about time for back to school, everybody's cooking. So, all right. So the Christmas to Remember stamp set is actually part of the Painted Christmas Suite. So these are sort of coordinating together. The dies actually in this one, there are a set of dies that go with this one, but they're pine cones and pine boughs and kind of more backgroundy images. This die set that is actually bundled with a Christmas season stamp set actually has dies that will cut out sentiments on here. So you can see that the dies go with some of the little sentiments on here. So probably, I don't know, this one will go in here. So it's a nice, like I said, a nice set of dies, nice set of coordinating dies, a huge suite of products. There's designer series paper and ribbon and all sorts of pretty things to go with it. So definitely, if you haven't seen it, check it out in the mini catalog. It's on page 16, 17, 18, and 19. So it's kind of a big suite of things in the mini catalog. All right. Hey, Deb, thanks for hopping in, and Jeanette as well. The other thing that I used, which it may be a little bit difficult to see, is these are the Wintry embossing folders, and they are sold together as a pair, and they're from the annual catalog. The one that I used on my card is actually this one, which is the pine boughs. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully you can see it. I don't know if I'm catching the light the right way on here. It's a little hard to tell on the video, but the background I actually embossed with the little pine bough. So, which I thought was kind of a nice little addition to the background of it. And I think that's about it. We'll kind of talk through the rest of the things as we're going through. Used a different designer series paper on the front, one of the free ones from Celebration. So all sorts of good things. Before we get going, I did want to talk about one thing quickly. This is going to be going out in my newsletter tonight. So if you're a newsletter subscriber, you're going to see this. And if you're not, you should be a newsletter subscriber. So go out to my blog, which is stampwithamyk.com. And on the right-hand sidebar, there's a little link that you can click to join my newsletter. If you go to one of my past videos, you will also find a link. Or if you're looking at this video on YouTube, you will find a link to all of my social media stuff. And one of them is subscribing to my newsletter. So this is going to go out in my newsletter tonight. Our team is doing a little Check Out the Crew event. As you all are aware, there's an awesome joining promotion going on right now with Celebration, where you get a free bundle with your starter kit. So we wanted to answer questions. We're just going to do a fun event on Facebook mostly. We're also going to do a little Zoom meeting afterwards for anybody who's not on Facebook but is interested in chatting with us. Or if you are on Facebook and you still want to chat with us, you're welcome to come and join the Zoom meeting as well. So it's just to get to know the team. We'll answer your questions about being a demonstrator, answer your questions about joining, all that sort of thing. So let me know if you have questions about this. If you are interested in attending the event, it will be on August 29th, and we're going to run it from about 4 in the evening till 8 in the evening Eastern time, so you have to kind of translate that to whatever time zone you're in. But drop me an email at amy@stampwithamyk.com, and I can put you on the list of people who I will send the link out to. And I'm also going to be posted on my blog, which is stampwithamyk.com, a day ahead of time, so you can join up with that group if you're interested in joining. So, hey, Jerry and she, I can't even speak today. Jerry and she is what I'm trying to say. Thanks for joining. And Jeanne is here as well. Both, yeah, they are good about getting us to get all the stamp sets in that big old bundle, aren't they? So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and get going on this. I have pre-done this ahead of time, and all that I did is this was kind of a leftover scrap of cherry cobbler cardstock. It started out as one piece, and I wanted it to be 4 1/4 wide because I wanted to cover the whole card front, and it was about 3 inches tall when I started it. I embossed it with the pine bough embossing folder from the Wintry embossing folder. So just ran it through my die cutting machine with that embossing folder, and then simply chopped it in half. Because I was only going to have a little bit peeking out from the top and the bottom. That's basically what I wanted on my card front, was just the little peaks of it. And so we're going to go ahead and glue that together. The card base is cherry cobbler, and it's cut to, this card base is cut to 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4. My original one is one of the top folding card bases, so that one is cut to 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5.5. So you can choose whichever your favorite card base is. I tend to like the ones that are the top fold, but I know not everyone does, so I try to show a little bit that you can do them either way with almost all of my cards. Will work with either one, unless there's something wrapped around the card front. Sometimes those you have to do the top folds on, but usually most of the rest of them you can do it either way, and nobody knows the difference. You just get to pick which is your favorite fold for the card. All right, so I'm adhering the little embossed pieces to the top and the bottom of my card base with some multi-purpose liquid glue. And again, that gives me a little bit of wiggle room here so that I can slide things around if I don't get it lined up exactly correctly. So, hey, Nyoka, I'm glad you're here in Maryland as well. Thanks for joining. So next up in the center of the card, I actually have a piece of the Peaceful Prints Designer Series paper. This is one of the free items that you can get from Celebration, from Stampin' Up! During Celebration is what I should say, with an order of $50 or greater. It's a beautiful pack of Designer Series paper. It's 12 by 12. It's got some really awesome prints in it. It coordinates very nicely with the Peaceful Deer stamp set bundle, but again, it also just has some really good winter images in it and Christmas images in it. If you are interested in just getting a good pack of paper, you can definitely just get the paper. You don't even have to get the deer bundle, although you will want the deer bundle. So, just get it. Then you won't be sad that you missed it. I am adhering that to a piece of Sahara Sand cardstock, again with multi-purpose liquid glue, because it's a larger panel and it kind of goes side to side. I want to make sure I have everything lined up. The panel of Designer Series paper is 3 7/8 by 4 1/4, and then the Sahara Sand panel underneath it is 4 by 4 1/4. And again, all the details are going to be posted out on my blog tomorrow, so no need to worry about what I'm saying for measurements. Just check out the blog post. I'll link it up in the video, so you'll be able to just click on it and head over and look at the measurements and things if you want to go take a peek at it. All right. Oh, thanks, Pam. I appreciate that. And thanks for joining today as well. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to the card front. And when I do this, I put it on my grid paper. Hopefully you can see. Whoops, I just wiggled it around with my fingers. I tried to line it up here with grid lines. And then I can line up here that this is 3/4 of an inch. This is 3/4 of an inch. And then we should be even and in the middle of the card front. Now, if it's not exactly even in the middle of the card front, nobody's going to know but you. But I was aiming for the middle of the card, so that was how I did it, is I just turned it and lined it up on my grid paper, and that helped me to get it lined up and hopefully straight on the card front. Hey, Debbie, thanks for joining. So I pre-did a couple of the images, pre-stamped them, just because these were duplicate images and I didn't figure you needed to see me stamp every single thing on the card front. So I will talk through as I stamp the images what colors I used on everything. But let's get going with the first one. I have garden green ink, and that is what this image is stamped in. And I'm just stamping it on basic white cardstock, and then we're going to die cut everything. So it doesn't necessarily matter where I get these placed. They don't have to be perfectly stamped on the paper. Just get them on your paper, obviously. All right, so there's my garden green image. And because I didn't have enough blocks, there are a lot of images I'm stamping right now. I kind of double mounted the images because these were ones that it didn't really matter. They don't require being precisely lined up, so I could just sort of ink them, stamp them, and be done with it. So this one is Evening Evergreen, and I'm stamping again the little evergreen image in Evening Evergreen ink. All right, I got those done. Let me set that aside and close up the ink pad before I hopefully don't stick my fingers in it. Next up, we have got Soft Seafoam, which is another one of the greens. And I'm going to be stamping the little, I don't even know what image, is that mistletoe? I think that's mistletoe. Y'all are much better at the plant things than I am. So, and usually somebody pops on and is like, I totally stamped that in the wrong color. That's okay. We'll just flip them around a little bit. So, oh, and it's a bad image too. I didn't even get a nice stamp. Okay, so let's not talk about the mistletoe. We are not going to stamp that one. And the one that I wanted to stamp in Soft Seafoam is the larger image here. This is the one that I intended to stamp, and I was talking and not paying attention and stamped the wrong thing. There we go. That's better. Okay, so this one is Soft Seafoam. We'll just pretend like that one's not there since I messed that one up. Soft Succulent is the color that I wanted to use on the little, what I think is mistletoe image. So it looks like mistletoe to you. Okay, so I thought that's what it was, but again, I usually say the wrong thing, and then somebody hops on and corrects me, and I'm like, I'm just not a plant person. So, all right. There we go. That is Soft Succulent. That is the color I wanted that one stamped in. Next up, we've got some pine cones here, and there are two different pine cone images. There's a larger and a smaller, and there are actually two images for each pine cone. And I'll show you in a second how these layer together. So let me start. When I do the two-step stamping, I often find that it's easier to stamp the darker color first. And I'll show you in a second why that is, and hopefully I won't mess it up when I do it. But this is Early Espresso ink, and I'm going to be stamping the large pine cone in that. And this is the kind of more lined large pine cone, if that makes sense. So the more, I don't know, outlining image, I guess. I don't know if that's the correct term for it, but the smaller image. And again, I've got a smaller pine cone here that I'm also going to be stamping in Early Espresso ink on the basic white cardstock. And then I'm going to stamp over the top of it with the more solid image with the lighter color. Just because, in my opinion, it is easier to see with the lighter color ink. I can see through the stamp a little bit better and see where I'm stamping it at a little bit better. And then I can hopefully get things lined up a little bit better. So it's not always perfect, and my stamping is not a perfect technique, but I just find it easier to stamp them this way around. You can do them the other way if that's easier for you. Everybody kind of has their own way to do it, but that's my one little tip. If you're struggling to get them to line up, start with the darker image first, and then stamp your lighter image over the top of it, and I find it easier to see them that way. So. Oh, Linda says she just got her stamp set bundle. Yes, yep, it's a good one, and I'm glad you got it. You're going to have fun playing with it. So, all right. Okay, so we've got our kind of greenery images all stamped here, and now I'm going to start die cutting. So again, these are all the dies, and they coordinate with all the images on here, so it's going to take me a minute to kind of get things cut out, and I probably will do maybe 2, maybe 3 passes through the die cutting machine, just because sometimes if I load too many dies on, things start getting squirrely and don't cooperate. I probably forgot to say it was Crumb Cake. That's the lighter color ink that I use. So thank you. Thank you for pointing that out, because I probably did forget to say it. I start talking, I don't know what I've said. So, all right, so I'm going to die cut a couple of these images out, and then I will put them over here and run through and cut the second set out. So hopefully y'all are enjoying your day. We're getting ready. School starts for my younger one next week already, which is kind of shocking. The older one doesn't start until after the Labor Day holiday. So hopefully if you're a teacher or have kids in school, hopefully you're kind of getting things ramped up and ready to go too. All right. Well, maybe I can get these all done in one pass. I don't know. I probably better not, because usually when I try that, then it doesn't work. All right, let's run this through my die cutting machine over here. Because usually if I start to pile too many of the die cuts on, then all of a sudden things start sliding, and then I end up with a big mess, and then I regret it, and then I have to restamp things. It's never fun. All right, so let's get these popped out of here and get the dies back over here on the magnetic sheet before I lose track of all of those. Not that I've lost dies before, but yes, I have. All right, then let me run the last two little pine cones through here. Hopefully it'll just take one pass to get those done. And I'll be back on screen in a second. So, all right, hopefully the little pine cones will cooperate. And I know it's very exciting to watch me not die cut things. So, okay, so we are done with the majority of the die cutting for this card. We do have to cut out the sentiment yet, but that's a pretty simple one, and it's only one run through, hopefully, unless I mess that up too. So, oh, thanks, Jackie. I appreciate that. So, all right, so we have all of our little die cut pieces. Now we just need to kind of start layering and arranging them on the card front. I used glue dots when I was adhering things to the card front. Glue dots are kind of my favorite one for this type of a project, just because they layer pretty well, and I don't know, they work nicely. They also can be peeled back up as long as you haven't really smushed them down really hard. You can peel the glue dots usually back up if you've just kind of placed them on the paper. Like I try to do that as I'm working on a collage like this. I try to sort of place the die cuts with my glue dots underneath where I think that I want them to land, and then I go and once I have everything where I think it needs to be, that's when I do the final like smoosh down to make sure everything is stuck down well. But for now, I just kind of try to place them there and get them a little bit stuck so that they don't slide all over the place, but not stick them down completely until I know that I'm ready and everything is good to go on it. So again, I'm just using little glue dots, pressing them to the back of the die cuts. And one more little die cut here. Oop, my soft succulent one that I messed up on and stamped it in soft seafoam the first time. Just going to tuck that one right underneath here and try to make sure that everything stays on the card front. That's the number one thing, because it does get a little challenging to get them into an envelope if you have things hanging off the sides. And yep, I've done that before too. So, all right. So let's stick on one of the pine cones. This is the larger of the two, obviously. So we're going to take that one, and I think we'll kind of turn it like that. And again, each one of the collages is going to turn out just slightly differently because, unless you're really, really good at placing things, things don't always end up in exactly the same spot. So, which is fine, because again, it's a collage and it's supposed to sort of, it changes and it's not a big deal. All right, we're going to adhere a couple of these on facing downward here for underneath the card, underneath the sentiment. Some of these I may need to trim back just a little bit depending on how they fit up underneath here. So yep, this one I'm going to trim off, and again, nobody's going to know that you've trimmed this off. They're never going to see this because it's going to be tucked up and hidden underneath the sentiment, but I do that a lot of times, again, especially when I'm doing like a layering type collage where I want things to kind of tuck up and be, maybe, there we go, I couldn't get the, I'm like, lift up, pine cone. So, all right, I want things to kind of tuck up and go underneath things, I trim a lot of my die cuts down like that, just because it makes it easier for maneuvering things around, and then you don't have to sit and wrestle with it if you've got the ends of it trimmed off, which I think I'm just going to go ahead and trim off this one before we even start, because I know that this one's going to require a little bit of tucking up and underneath here as well. All right, so we'll do that. And I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of the peak of the glue dot that's sticking out there, which is not a big deal at all, because our sentiment and probably the other pine cone are actually going to cover that anyway. So nobody's going to see that you've got a little, that I did a little not so straight glue dotting. So it'll all be good. All right, then I'm tucking in the final little piece here, which is the evergreen piece, and then I've got one more of the pine cones to add on, and then we can tuck in some of the pretty sparkly things. Got a couple of the little gold holly leaves that we're going to put on here. So again, I think we'll turn this one and kind of set it on there like that, and I think we'll call it pretty much good. I think we're just going to add in the little gold holly leaves, which are some of the things that are also in this suite of products. They're beautiful and shiny and perfect for all things holiday. So definitely, definitely get some of these if you don't have them, because you're going to want them as well for all of your holiday cards, because they're really pretty. And again, they don't like overwhelm the card, but they add just enough little extra sparkle that they're really nice. I don't know how else to describe them. They're easy to stick on, and they're flat too, which is always good for any holiday card, trying to keep the bulk of the card down a little bit so you don't have to pay tons in extra postage to mail them out. So, all right, again, we're going to tuck that one right up underneath there. And oh, thanks, Beth. I'm glad you like all the greens. I actually started out, I was going to use the painted Christmas Designer Series paper on the background of it. So I started out with all of those colors. And then I don't know, I couldn't make it work with how I wanted it to look. So I went with the more neutral on the background, and I liked the way it ended up. So, all right, next up, I've got a little bit of the name of it is the Cherry Cobbler and Gold half-inch metallic ribbon, which again, this is in that same suite of products. So all of these things, if you want to order the big suite, everything's in there and everything's included in it. So, and Karen K, look away. These are not my nice scissors. So they're just the ones I had laying on my desk. So look the other way. I know it's going to drive you crazy that I'm hacking this with the regular old paper snips, but they work. So, all right, then I'm going to take a couple, actually I'm going to use a little bit of Stampin' Seal. There we go. I couldn't find my Stampin' Seal. I'm going to use a little bit of that to adhere the ribbon down, and I've just sort of placed it right over the top of the pine cones. No special way to do it, because again, I kind of know where I generally want this to land, and I know where my sentiment is generally going to be. So that was mainly what I was aiming for, is just making sure that I had that covered, and we'll cover it with my sentiment. And I kind of did a little bit of an angled X, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that's the official term that I'll use, but it's sort of an angled X. So, all right. Last little piece on here that we need to do is the stamping of the sentiment. So I've got another scrap of basic white cardstock and my sentiment from the Christmas to Remember stamp set. And I just used the Season's Greetings on this one because I wanted it to be a little bit of a bigger sentiment. And again, just using Cherry Cobbler ink. And we're hopefully going to stamp this on the paper and die cut it correctly so I don't end up with any goofs on it. So again, we're die cutting it, so it doesn't matter that I stamped it totally not at all straight. We're still good to go on that. So again, this is one of the seasonal labels dies, which is bundled with the Christmas season stamp set. So the stamp set that I've been using for all these background pieces actually has some sentiment dies in it. So we're going to take this and run it through the die cutting machine really quickly. Hey Patty, thanks for joining today. I know I need to keep a ribbon scissors there, Karen. I need to put you in charge of setting up my mess and cleaning up my mess. So, but no, if I had a pair of nice paper snips what I need to do is set a pair of paper snips that I only use on ribbon, and then they would be nice and sharp, and I wouldn't have to hack at the ribbon like I usually do. But it's all good. It usually gets cut. So, all right, so there we go. We've got our sentiment die cut here, and we're just going to add a couple Stampin' Dimensionals under this side and a little bit of Stampin' Seal on this side, and I'm just going to stick it right here to the card front. If I can find, I was going to say if I can find my Stampin' Dimensionals, I have a mess here. there seems to be a lot of paper and a lot of things floating around on my desk with this card. There's a lot of die cutting involved in it, which is good. So, all right, so adding a little Stampin' Seal on the one side of it and little Stampin' Dimensionals over here on the other side so that it's raised up a little bit on top of my stack of die cuts over here. And since this side's already raised up with all those die cuts stacked up underneath it, I knew I didn't need a whole lot of extra bulk underneath that side to get the sentiment to adhere the way that I want it to. All right, so now that I have everything placed and this looks like where I want it to be, I'm going to do one final kind of smoosh down on all of these die cuts because I hadn't done that yet until I had everything placed and made sure that this is where I wanted everything to be. And I think this is where I want everything to be. So. Oh yeah, yours looks splotchy. Oh, I'm not having trouble with splotchy. So you can take a sponge dauber if your ink pads are overly inky, which it sounds like they might be if they're coming out splotchy. Take an or a sponge dauber, ink up your image, and then take your sponge dauber, kind of lightly tap it on your ink pad, and then tap it all over that image, and you'll get a much, much, much better image. So try that, Nyoka, if you're still having trouble with it. So. Oh, thanks, Linda. I appreciate that. Went pine cone hunting when you went camping. Aw, sweet. All right. So I actually started out with 2 of the little holiday rhinestones, the cherry cobbler ones. And then I realized that that was all I had. I thought I had another pack of them, and I didn't. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. If you have the holiday rhinestones, you can certainly use them. If you do not, I'll show you the cheater way that you can turn them into holiday rhinestones. You just need your dark cherry cobbler Stampin' Blends marker. And all that you do is pick out 3 of your rhinestones. I'm going to do 2 of the littler ones and 1 of the bigger ones. And you just color all over them. Give it a second. It doesn't take very long, but you do. I usually try to give it a second or 2 to make sure that the ink on the little rhinestones is dry. And then, ta-da, you have cherry cobbler rhinestones. So if you're like me and don't realize that you don't have a pack of the rhinestones that you are wanting, then you can make them whatever color you have in Stampin' Blends markers. So that's one of my other little cheater tricks that I do a lot of times with rhinestones when I want them in a certain color and we don't have them in the color, or I have run out of them in that color. You can always color them with your Stampin' Blends markers. All right, so I've picked those off here and I'm going to add them onto the card front. And again, my ribbon's in a little different place, so I'm placing my rhinestones in a little different place than I did on my original card, but still the same basic look to it. So that's it for the card front. On the inside of the card, I kept it pretty simple as well. I've got basic white cardstock. This is cut to 4 by 5 1/4, and we're just going to do a little bit of stamping, stick a little bit of designer paper. Oh, here's my cherry cobbler. And that'll be it for the card. So, all right, so the sentiment came from the Christmas to Remember stamp set. And again, we're just stamping that in cherry cobbler ink here on basic white cardstock. Hopefully I'm stamping it the right way around and stamping it somewhat straight, which I think I got both. Then I grabbed a little bit, just because there were so many of the same foliage images in it, I grabbed a little bit of the painted Christmas 12 by 12 designer series paper, from the big suite of products in the catalog. It just cut off a little strip, it's about 5/8 of an inch wide by about, this one may be a little bit over 4 inches long, but I will trim it down, but it's just a little scrap of trimmed away designer series paper, and I'm just going to adhere that to the bottom. Oh, you've never colored the rhinestones? It's really easy, and it's a good way to get them in whatever color you want them in, so it's awesome. Definitely get a pack of the clear ones, and you make them any color that you have in a Stampin' Blends marker. You don't want to use Stampin' Write markers, the regular Stampin' Up! Markers on those, because they are water-based and they will never dry, and it'll be a smeary, huge mess. But the alcohol-based markers do dry on the rhinestones, so you can color rhinestones and pearls and really any of our little embellishments with a Stampin' Blends marker and turn them to whatever color you want them to be. So, all right, so let's go ahead and do the quick crease on there with the bone folder. And that's it for my card share today. So I appreciate y'all being here. Definitely take a peek at that suite of products in the new mini catalog. Again, it's on page 16 and 17 where everything is kind of displayed. But you definitely are going to want it. It's a beautiful suite of products, beautiful designer paper, beautiful die cuts, beautiful sentiments, good good set of stuff. So definitely take a look. Again, I'll be posting all the details for this on my blog tomorrow, which is stampwithamyk.com. So feel free to stop out there and take a peek. I'll also link it up once the blog post goes live around 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, so that you'll be able to just do one click over to my blog post and check out all the details. I will plan to be back live on my YouTube channel around 2 o'clock Eastern Time on Friday, and then back here live again around 2 o'clock Eastern Time next week, Tuesday, on Facebook. So thanks again for joining. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll chat soon.